I'm Alan Nisbet, and I teach cello and bass and chamber music here at Loyola, and various and sundry other things. My background is I went to school at the University of Illinois and got a master's degree there, and then went directly from there to the professional world, and that's where a large part of my experience is. And then I came from the professional world to Loyola and have been teaching here for several years. Well, I started out in the New Orleans Symphony back in 1975 and played in there on and off for 18 years. And one of the years that I didn't do that, I was acted as associate principal cello of the Denver Symphony. And one other year, I actually took a year off and did a year of teaching at Northern Colorado University in Greeley. And then from there, your musical career takes you many different directions. You do an awful lot of playing. Obviously, I've covered a lot of the orchestral literature as a professional player, but also I have a pretty extensive career as a soloist, not only with orchestras, but in recital, in chamber music. And so hopefully I bring that world of experience to this job. Oh, that depends on the day.
Oh, yeah?
All music, all great music is good. So it doesn't really matter to me. I mean, you can wake up one day and be loving Brahms, and the next day love Otis Redding. It doesn't matter to me. Great music is great music. Of course, I'm a classically trained cellist, so what I play are the classics, and there's just a world of wonderful music out there, and some of it strikes you at this point, and sometimes you can go another direction. That's one of the beauties of this business, there's just a great variety of music out there.
What about heroes? Did you have any heroes growing up?
Well, there are a lot of cellists that I look up to, also bass players that I look up to. The one I grew up with really admiring is Leonard Rose, who I actually had the privilege of sitting down and taking a couple of lessons from him at some point, which was really very cool for me. And the player that I really admire as a player and a musician is Lynn Harrell, also just a wonderful, wonderful cellist. And the bass players that just knock me out are Edgar Meyer, and then a whole bunch of jazz players like Ron Carter and people along that line. They're just great players. You learn so much from them. Those guys they're probably in a generation before me, but there's a lot of opportunity to go back and hear those great players and see what they were doing with the instrument, and see how performance has evolved, if it has, and you can go back and study their recordings. And Casals, of course, was one of the early recorders, and so the quality of the recording is probably a little grainy, and it's not as much precision as we get today, but if you listen carefully you can hear him. But wonderful musician, and you can always tell that through noise. When you start in on Bach suites for the cello, you see probably upwards of 20 performance editions of these suites, and probably more. I haven't made a count, but and they're all different. They have different markings in them, And somebody has edited these things, and they're edited for their ears. And it's always interesting to look at different editions of these things and see what these different people would do, how they would finger something, how they would bow it, what's their approach to this. And the value of doing that, I think, especially, well, for anyone, but for our students here, is to see what kind of variety there is and how these things can actually change a piece. And as you're studying these things, the ideal thing would be for you to embrace something for yourself and come to some kind of understanding for yourself what these things mean within the style, and then make them your own. So I don't think there's any performance edition out there that doesn't have pencil marks for the person that's playing. So they're all just sort of suggestions, and this is where you might go. And sometimes it may be something that resonates with you, sometimes it's not. And so then you have to, it all comes down to your choices about how this is going to play. And if you're not convinced of it, no one else will be. So that's where we begin with all this stuff. So, yeah. I think every level of playing has a different level of skills, or a different skill set, or not necessarily skills, but a different emphasis on things. So when you're playing in orchestras, which is a larger ensemble, and especially as a string player, your job really is to contribute to a whole, to blend, and not be necessarily heard as an individual. That's not where you go in an orchestra. When you start playing chamber music, then you also have to blend, but you're also heard. And you have to have that collaborative approach to playing, but yet still play with a sense of solo-ness, is what I call it. And then be able to come in and out of that, and be able to go back into the group. Then here's your chance to do something, and then go back again. So that it's always this sort of moving back and forth. So it's obviously a very collaborative thing you do. When you're playing by yourself, if you're playing by yourself in front of an orchestra, I think you probably bring a different concept of sound to the playing, because usually you're having to compete with a large group of people and you're trying to fill a large hall. So it's going to be different than playing in a smaller room with a smaller group of people. I mean, you're not going to approach it the same way. And if you're playing only by yourself, which are Bach suites, for instance, then that's a different kind of sound approach, and it's not requiring you to collaborate with anyone. You're collaborating with yourself, and you're trying to shape something solely by yourself. It's a totally different approach to playing. So it's really great to have all of those experiences and all those skills to know what's required of you. Well, I think it's understanding the level of preparation, the standard that is required of you for whatever goal you have. If you're going for admission into a graduate school, for instance, they have standards that they expect of you. Maybe a level of repertoire, of course, a level of preparation, and a quality of playing that they're looking for. Everybody strives to play in tune. Everybody strives to play on time. Those are basic skills. Do you also, beyond those things, have an expressive quality that's appealing? And that's one of the things that we continue to develop. If you're coming into college those skills probably aren't developed as much as later on in your career. So we're looking for things like just your basic tool set, or musical skills that can be developed, and also a willingness to get better, which is, I think, the most important thing. This is all about your mental self and your discipline of as a musician and how you get better. It starts here, and it has to start with that willingness to get better. And that's pretty easy to see in an audition, and that's probably at that level from high school to college is really that important piece of information that we're looking for to make sure that these kids are going to develop the necessary skills and get to that level of excellence that gets them further on in their career. Now, if you're doing an orchestra audition, possibly one of the hardest things that humans do, in my opinion. You've got, depending on the audition, 200 cellists competing for the same job, and in 10 minutes you have to show them that you're better than they are. And it's pretty daunting. And but it's really astonishing to me how it's still the same skill set. You play in tune, you play on time. If you do those two things, you're going to get a long way in an audition. And you'd be amazed at how many people don't do those two things. So it may sound a little easier than it actually is. So I listen to pros all the time, and my conversation with professional players is really no different than a formative kid. It's all about fundamentals and basics. And even as pros, we forget sometimes about fundamentals and basics in playing. So we revisit those, and we go about, and that's all about, especially at a professional level, getting people to a comfortable place to express themselves. And it's usually some troubling thing technically that we try to discover and get past. And once you get past all these things, then your ability to express yourself becomes easier. So that's our process. Extremely important. We do, you see a lot of people that breathe shallowly, and it's all about tension. And tension is the great killer of playing or singing or doing anything physically. Sports, anything. It's about the ability to relax and settle your body, and breathing is a large part of that. So we talk a lot about that, so that you're not breathing shallow, you're actually breathing, and you're breathing from your gut, and all the things that they teach singers to do, that we do the same. And it's exploring that side of you physically that's really important. I think those skills are very transferable to a lot of different things. It's problem solving is one thing, because we do it on a daily basis. Take a problem. Music is a series of problems to solve, and so it instills an extraordinary discipline of mind and body to be able to deal with these things. And it's a great organizer of the mind. The actual discipline of music is such an important skill, and I think that's why medical schools and law schools love musicians. And they bring that kind of discipline and self-knowledge to whatever they do. And I think there's a documented evidence that there are more arts people or musicians that are admitted to medical school than science majors. And I don't think that shouldn't be a shock to us, okay, because we bring those skills. And I've talked to deans of law schools and people in the arts or in the medical profession, and they love musicians. They are the people that they love to train. Our former law school dean, who tragically died this summer, served on a committee with him a couple years ago, and he expressed to me how he really loved musicians in law school. They were always the best students there, always. And I just thought that was really pretty cool. So, I mean, the things that we're doing here are giving kids skills where they could be a musician, or they can go out of here and do nearly anything and do it well. I'm doing, of course, we have a faculty string quartet, and we're preparing for some concerts in chamber music. And I'm doing some solo things out and about, but nothing set yet. So, but we're mostly my focus is right now on chamber music, but that won't last long. we'll go into other things. I'm always looking for maybe we talked about this before, maybe a little video project about pedagogy, and something that maybe we could explore down the line. Well, I think the reason everybody wrote for it, because it turned out to be a pretty cool ensemble. Whether it was invented by accident or not, there you go, and it's a great sound. I mean, you can't deny it. So it's like, here we are, and it's become as ubiquitous as a symphony, as far as an ensemble. I'm going to give you the honest answer. The honest answer is I don't listen to music every day. I listen to music as business. I do music probably 12 hours a day, and the last thing I want to do when I come home is listen to music. I do listen to music, but it's usually a score study or something that I'm interested in finding out about, and so it's part of my business to do that. If I listen to music just outside of business, it's probably in a recording sense, I would probably listen to Stevie Wonder, or something else that I don't play. Those are just as a difference, and something that's still wonderful stuff, but it's just a different kind of music. So that's where I would probably go. But I do go to concerts, so I like live music. Well, I think the overriding concern for parents is employment afterwards. What can you say? There are degree programs that are probably maybe more job related than others. Well, that's true of any discipline, but in ours, music education practically guarantees you a job out of school. If that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for a job guarantee, go into music ed. There's tons of jobs out there, and good jobs, so that's something to do. Music therapy is another one, big growing field, and something that I think there's more and more of a need for as you go forward. Your program, I'm not. You probably know more about that than I do, but it's you know, those are options for musicians as you go forward. As a player, pretty tough, pretty tough. So you know, at Loyola, we wouldn't necessarily discourage anybody from doing it, but you better have the guns, and we'll be as honest with you as we can. I want them to get better every day. And that what that means is they, you know, through their learning of the cello and specifically about the cello, you've got to be willing to get better every day. And that's a discipline. So you're learning about the discipline of being a musician, and which, as we've talked about before, follows through in a lot of different areas of life. But if you're on that track, then you are on the track of being a musician. That means that nobody achieves absolute success in their lifetime. Or if you feel like you have, please stop and do something else. So it's becoming a lifelong learning path. And that's what we are as musicians. If you can buy into that, you're a better human being, in my opinion. And that's what I hope for most for my kids.